One misconception is like you don't have to take your IRA out before 73 or 75 to avoid this massive problem at 73 or 75. So that's one misconception, right? So you can spread it out over your lifetime.
All thoughts and opinions shared in this recording belong to the participants. This podcast is meant to inform and educate and should not be seen as solicitation or endorsement for business. The advisors discuss some of our firm's investment processes. These are just a few of the many possible approaches to investing. Individual results may vary depending on your goals, risk tolerance, market conditions, and other personal factors. Please consult a qualified financial professional before implementing any investment strategy.
Welcome to the Market Moment. This is Matt, and I'm here with John this morning.
Morning.
Just the two of us. Crowd favorite, so you know what
right.
We were asked specifically just to. No, we've got a lot.
Is there music in the background that's just the two? You know, you want to sing it?
No,
it should be in the background. Anyway, we'll find out.
Yeah, we've just got me and John on here this morning, but a lot to get into. Everything going good in your world?
Everything's going great. Before we get into it, this is a good show, right? We always have a question of the day type thing, and then we get into our topics a little bit about the market. But Volkswagen last week or a couple weeks ago had this massive deal where AI went out, or like their electronics went out in their cars.
Okay.
But you could still drive them, but you lost all your, everything electronic. So when it first happened, I was in a parking lot at Walmart and I had pulled in and I stayed there for like 4 hours because the backup camera didn't work and I had no idea how to back up. I've had a backup camera for years and I just was like, I can't back up. I'm going to run over somebody. So I sat there literally for hours just waiting for the whole parking lot to clear before I could leave.
That would be really funny if it were true, but
but it was weird when you're used to technology and all the stuff that
you're like feel
spoiled
without it.
You're crippled without it. And I was like, man, if that happened across the country of all the things like cell phones went out and everything went out, would we even be able to survive as a country?
Well, now that everybody's spooked and terrified, we can get into that. Is kind of crazy.
It is crazy. Anyway.
We can get into the topic for the day. So the question of the day, frequently asked question, and this is a good one. There's no way we're going to even be able to scratch the surface on all of the different variables and scenarios that could apply here. But the question is, what is the best order to withdraw from accounts in retirement? So IRAs, Roths, or taxable accounts. When do you take money out? Which ones do you take money out of first? And so we were talking about this a little bit before. So I'll kind of give us the general kind of default answer that might be most applicable. That it might be kind of your starting point, but then almost everyone's going to need to make some minor adjustments from there and maybe some major changes depending on your situation. So typically the way people think about it is, take income from your taxable account first, your IRA, and your Roth last. Okay, so that's kind of the default, that if you're going to start with any assumptions, probably start assuming that makes the most sense, for the most people. But, when we get into these planning conversations, when we're managing tax brackets and we're trying to do additional tax planning, there's so many variables that come into this, and it's really all a tax equation, right?
It's a tax equation, 100%.
Because that's the biggest difference. That's why you would take money out of one account, not the other, and vice versa. And so, depending on when you're retiring, depending on if you're worried about IRMAA, depending on if you're trying to do Roth conversions, there's just so many variables that go into should that be different, right? Yeah. But the default would be taxable, IRA, and then Roth. The reason that would be the default, a couple reasons. One, typically we say, hey, let's try to save Roth money for as far down the road as possible. It's going to grow tax-free. We get to use it tax-free. We get to leave it to our beneficiaries tax-free. So it is the most tax-efficient wealth-building vehicle that we have in terms of how the account is taxed. And so, we don't want to overutilize that money too soon, unless there's a very, very, very specific reason that we've, crunched the numbers and it made sense to maybe use a little bit of that. The taxable money, like the IRAs, 401ks, the reason you might not touch it immediately is because it's growing tax deferred. And so you get a little bit of additional compounding, and maybe you're going to be in a little bit lower bracket in the future, maybe not, but that's kind of the general thought there. And so Can we take that money out when we're in a lower bracket versus where we're at today? And then the taxable money is pretty straightforward, right? You're just paying the capital gains, the dividend, the 1099 interest income off of that investment income. And so it doesn't matter near as much on when you take that money out. So some situations that could potentially change that. I promise I'm going to let you talk.
No, I'm good. I love it. You're doing.
So if you're doing Roth conversion planning and you're needing to move a lot of money from IRAs to Roths, that's going to change your tax situation, because now you're not just paying you're not just paying taxes on the income you're taking to live off of, but you're paying taxes on, the money you're moving from your IRA to your Roth. So that could potentially change that. If you have, your current makeup or mix of the accounts, if you don't have very much taxable money and 90% of your portfolio is in IRAs, then we don't necessarily want to utilize and just spend down all of our taxable money, let our IRA money grow, because that's going to, give us less access to less flexibility in the future. That IRA money will grow, which is going to make our RMDs higher in the future, which gives us less flexibility. So maybe maybe for a situation, and we run into this a lot because so many people have heavily utilized the 401k as their primary savings vehicle. Do we start pulling out of IRAs or 401ks sooner than they maybe originally expected? Managing the tax brackets, but to kind of mitigate that future RMD liability and allow our taxable accounts to continue to grow and build for a period of time. Yeah. And then maybe there is a situation where maybe you've done a great job of building a Roth account, right? And so maybe it makes sense you're right at the cusp of, jumping into IRMAA, right, which is when your Medicare premiums start pretty dramatically increasing.
Yeah.
And we need another $1,000 a month of income. Maybe we take that from a Roth,
right,
so that we can get the income we need, but we don't jump up and pay the additional, what is essentially an additional tax with IRMAA. So there's a lot of variables. What any initial thoughts? Or
you've answered? I mean, you've answered pretty broadly exactly what I would say. But I'll give you a couple things. Like, clients come in and they have there's a couple misconceptions or misthinking. Education hasn't been great for the years for a lot of people, right? Mm-hmm. On what we do. So they'll come in with a big IRA, they're getting ready to retire, and a lot of people think that, and I've had this happen many times, RMD age is 73 or 75, depending on when you're born, and they think at that time they have to take all their IRA out, right? Mm-hmm. Like I've had people with that mistake, but it's really just 3.6% of, and then it gradually goes up when you have that first year of RMD. So one misconception is like, you don't have to take your IRA out before 73 or 75 to avoid this massive problem at 73 or 75. So that's one misconception, right? So you can spread it out over your lifetime. The other thing that we don't know is when we're going to die, and we don't know what tax bracket it's going to be when we get to 73, 75, and all those things play into the planning of why you did a 401k in the first place, why you deferred money in the first place, was so that when you retired, you'd be at a lower bracket, mm-hmm. and you draw that money out and be taxable, but it'd be taxable at a lower bracket. When you come in to see us, we do all of that planning. Yeah. So we know kind of where we expect you to be in all your age brackets from the day you retire on through death. And then you just try to solve for the best way to pay the least amount of taxes possible, right, the most efficient way, leave the most money behind if that's your goal, the most efficient way. And to your point, like, when I'm talking to young clients, let's say you're in your 30s, your 20s, you're building your wealth. I think it's very important that it's more in play now where you could put money in a Roth, right?
Yeah, there's more options, more flexibility. Yeah. Roth 401ks are a thing now that more companies are offering.
Which wasn't there 10 years ago, right? So this is kind of a new thing. If you're young, take advantage of the Roth, but your company's going to match to your traditional.
Right.
But you also should have that non-qualified account. And one of the things we run into a lot is people retire at 55.
Yeah.
Or they want to retire at 55. Well, if you retire at 55, you really shouldn't take from your Roth or your traditional IRA, because you're going to pay on the traditional, you're going to pay some type of penalty, and you're going to pay taxes. So
there are ways around it, but it gets tricky.
There's ways around it, right? Yeah. But you want to have that non-qualified account as well. So when I'm talking to young people, build the 3 buckets: non-qualified, Roth, and you'll have the traditional.
Absolutely. Everybody always talks about diversification,
Right.
and what they're primarily talking about is how much should I have in stocks or large cap, small cap, mid cap,
Right.
How much fixed income. And that's all super important, but asset location, asset account diversification is
maybe
oftentimes
more important.
just as important or more important,
Yeah.
depending on the situation of if you're trying to retire early or not. But it gives you, we communicate it all the times with clients, we want flexibility. We want options. If we have all of our money in one type of an account, it kind of is what it is. Now we can start to do some things to try to change that, but we don't have near as much flexibility and planning opportunities to optimize your wealth building and limiting your tax burden as if unless if you had compared to if you had a third in taxable accounts, a third in IRAs, and a third Roth, then that just everything's on the table. There's so much more that can be done.
Exactly.
And so if you're younger, or if you've still got 5, 10, 15 years till retirement, start thinking about that now. Talk to your advisor, talk to us, talk to somebody, come up with a game plan for where do you need to be saving money, because maybe it's not maxing out your 401k.
Right.
Maybe it's get the match and then start reallocating some of that money to another type of an account to give you the flexibility you're going to need in the future, because all of us have to accept the fact that none of us know what the future looks like. So what tax brackets are in 10 years, we have no idea.
Right.
And so just accept that and say, and start with the fact that okay, I want options so that regardless of what they are in 10 years, we have flexibility to pull money from places, depending on whatever makes the most sense at the time.
And I think it's kind of interesting, when you have a tax issue because you're paying too much taxes, that's a nice problem to have, right? You've made too much money. You have too much money in an account. So, I guess my point to that is it's all relative. If you have money saved and you're putting in any of these formats, if you talk to an advisor early on, you'll be given the right guidance. If you don't, and you come in with all money in a 401k and an IRA, and it's all going to be taxable whenever you take it out, we'll help you make it the best opportunities for you for the rest of your life. But you're going to have to pay taxes. That's just the bottom line. It's not the end of the world.
Right.
So it's not like this is going to impede your chances of success most of the time.
And deferring income from IRAs once you're retired, you're not going to, most of the time, you're not going to be in an even lower bracket in the future, right? If you're retired or retiring, doesn't necessarily make sense to continue to defer that, because you're probably in the bracket you're going to be in, or close, for the rest of your life. And so maybe it makes sense to start taking money from IRAs to start unwinding that future tax RMD amount, because the last thing we want is that to continue compounding, and all of a sudden we hit RMD age, and now it just throws us into another level. And then last point here is even how you think of charitable giving is a big part of it. If you're not charitably inclined, we're going to look at it from, planning different. If you are, well, then that future RMD isn't as much of a concern, because we can, max out QCDs and really give money that way, limiting the tax impact of that. So there's just so many different variables. Again, the default is the traditional thinking is, money from income from your taxable accounts, or more heavily from your taxable accounts first, then your IRAs and your Roths last. Yeah. And that also often dictates how you're investing in those accounts, right? Because you might be more conservative or more aggressive depending on when you're planning to take income out. So
100%.
Really good question, really good topic. It's super, super important. Like John said, just as important, maybe more important than fine tuning and trying to perfect the asset allocation within the account. As important as that is, knowing the tax status and situation for the accounts is extremely important. So great question. Yeah. Hopefully we were able to just give you some insights into different ways to look at that and things to consider. So today we wanted to talk about just kind of where the market's at. So earnings have been incredibly resilient, been really strong. UPS came out today with a beat. The market's reacting.
Hey, that's important. UPS coming out with a beat, to me, is a broadening of the market. By the way, it's definitely just a company coming out with a beat, but it's a logistics company.
Yeah, they're up almost 8%, 7.6% here at the open, and so that is a big deal when you think about how is the underlying economy doing.
That's the movement of the economy.
You want your FedExes, UPSs, JB Hunts of the world
to be
making money and doing well. And so that is good. So earnings have been strong. Obviously the AI story is still kind of front and center, and those, the earnings of all the major tech companies have been incredibly strong and
I think
solid.
We have two big tech announcements, I believe, tomorrow, Google and Microsoft, which I'll be interested because, Chat GPT has come into play against Google, and the threat of that company taking share from Google. And I'll be curious. I don't find it's kind of like Amazon, Walmart, right? When Amazon started bursting on the scene, it was like, is Walmart going to be affected? And this economy is big enough to handle two different Google search engine / chat. So like, I don't think it's going to be that big a deal, but I'm curious to hear their report. And as long as as these companies keep beating and setting high expectations and beating those expectations, this market, regardless of what the government's and the shutdowns and all that, is important on our minds. But the market just keeps climbing.
Well, when you think about
all these things,
the tailwinds that we have, as many headwinds as we typically almost always have,
right?
And today's no different with the headwinds that we face. The tailwinds, our earnings are strong. We're in a rate cutting environment.
Right.
That's the expectation, is the Fed will cut at least once, maybe even twice before the end of the year.
Right.
And you kind of compound that on top of companies are making money.
Right.
And beating expectations, then that, it sets us up for, who knows, it's like flipping a coin in over a 2 or 3 month period, but it sets us up to see a good, strong end of the year here if that continues through earnings season.
Right. And other news that I think is interesting, housing cost increases are cooling off. Rent growth slowed noticeably in September. These are really good signs too, because one of the things I've always worried about here is the middle class squeeze. And you need to see some kind of reprieve on interest rates for new homes. But here's the economy overall, housing seems to be kind of resilient, and a lot of that is due to a lot of people having mortgage rates under 4%, historically low mortgage rates that aren't going to leave their homes. So you've had this little bit of pressure on housing for a long time, and so that kept prices up. So I'm glad to see like some of that little bit of cooling off there, which is great. You get more people involved in that sector of the market, which is good as well. So
the 10 years under 4% this morning.
It's kind of good. This is good. All stuff that's somewhat good.
Yeah. So that the 10-year, dropping is going to help, obviously, the mortgage rate environment.
Which is good.
And so, the hard part of this is right alongside all of these positive stories, earnings beats, rates are coming down, is you also have the news of a lot of job cuts. Yeah. Right? You've started to see some of these larger corporations laying off quite a few people. Nothing seismic yet, nothing that's been like earth-shattering, but it starts to add up. Every time you have a Google, a Microsoft, or whoever saying, hey, we're cutting 30,000 jobs or 15,000 jobs, it starts to weigh on people a little bit. Unfortunately, I think that's kind of, who knows? I'm not an expert in the where AI is internally within these large corporations and the efficiencies that they've already started to realize. But that's going to have an impact over time. People have been talking about it. I think it's going to have more of an impact on new hires than it will on like continuing to lay off more and more people. Like they'll just hire at a slower pace than they've maybe had to over time. But that's something that, the headlines are never fun to see when you see, hey, there's a lot of people,
So go back
being
to
impacted.
The late 90s and into 2000, we had the tech crisis, right? A lot of rhetoric back then before the tech downturn was that technology was going to take a lot of jobs away.
Right.
And it was kind of sort of happened a little bit. We know that like industry has gotten more technology advanced.
It did. If the
jobs
that existed before that were taken away, but new jobs were created that we never knew we would need.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's this thing, we don't know the answer to this yet, right? And I think I said this one podcast or two ago, but 16% of S&P 500 companies are using AI, which I thought was low. considering we've been in this thing for 4 or 5 years now, or this push on AI. So I find that interesting in the sense like, okay, only 16%. And when you see the layoffs of companies that are deeply involved in AI, it kind of makes you think, okay, well, maybe that's related to it, because these are the companies that actually are using AI and developing AI. Does that make sense? Like, and they're starting to lay off people. So long term, if we get 50% of companies using AI, what is it for? Is it taking jobs? Is it creating new jobs? And that's a little bit of the unknown.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like that we'll be resilient and somehow figure that out, and it'll work itself out as it does. There'll be other things created. But it is a little bit of an unknown, and it could weigh on the economy as we go forward.
I mean, part of the reason UPS, they jumped so much this morning at the open, obviously the beat, but then they announced their turnaround plan, and part of that, they said they've cut 48,000 jobs this year so far as part of their turnaround plan.
And they're leaning their company, which this is the stinky part about this whole world we're in, right? Corporate profits are what matters, right? Mm-hmm. And to get corporate profits, what do you have to do? You have to have sales. You have to have lean costs.
Yeah.
Right? So lean costs sometimes means, unfortunately, letting people go and using AI or using other forms. And now those people go out in the economy, they've got to find another job.
Yeah.
And now they're not going to spend as much for Christmas presents and whatever, because they're in a stressful situation, which could then turn around and affect the economy, going forward, where sales could go down and so on.
Yeah, it can be bad for the employee, good for the investor, the shareholder
of that company, right?
Right. The unfortunate side is though, these companies have to make the right, these companies have to make the right long-term decisions for their shareholders, and that 100%. Might sound like greedy. I know there's half the country out there would probably say like you're evil for saying that. But the way to think about it is like, if they don't, then the company's going to go under and everybody's going to lose their job.
Exactly.
And so if they're not making the right long-term decisions to maximize shareholder value, to maximize earnings, the way capitalism works is like someone else is going to come in and make those hard decisions and put them out of business. And so if they don't do that, then UPS isn't firing 48,000 people. They're firing 100% of their workforce. Because they can't continue operations. And so it's the give and take, the good and bad of capitalism. There's always going to be people that are negatively impacted and people that are positively impacted. Hopefully, there's not too many people that are negatively impacted, and those people can land on their feet and find and reposition and find new opportunities.
Well, to your point, as we talk, it's like a vicious cycle here. The companies, the CEO's main job is to make money for the company, right? The shareholders, that's what they're there for, and that sometimes leads to going outside the United States to do production. Mm-hmm. We've seen that happen, right? We've lost industry in the United States because we have, and not to make people mad, but unions cost a lot of money when you can go to Mexico, Southeast Asia, Ireland, and not have to pay union dues. It saves the company quite a bit of money. So companies are going to do what it takes to make the most money for their company.
Right.
CEOs, that's their job. And so sometimes it's hard. It hurts our economy, and jobs are lost and so on. And that's been happening forever. And somehow the economy keeps growing and capitalism keeps winning. But it does affect, like for every positive side, there's a negative side. And that's,
the best thing you can do, the best thing people can do for themselves is just not get too comfortable with their current skill set. And constantly constantly be trying to grow and get better. I mean, seriously, because that's what the companies are doing.
Too late for me, but you should learn how to teach yoga or something.
Yeah. No, that's what the companies are doing.
Right.
And so if you're not at the individual level also trying to do that, that's what we're trying to do here at the firm. How do we add more and more value to our clients? How do we do it? offer additional services?
Right.
How do we get better at the services that we currently offer?
Constantly searching for that.
Yeah. It's weekly where I'm communicating to the team of like, hey, kind of here's the next project. Or
shout out to Matt. He's our CEO, and this dude is always trying to find new ways to do it. No, it's not. But it's the truth. You're always searching for that next thing.
Well, I have this
to help us out.
Paranoia
which is awesome.
Of if we don't, we're going to get left in the dust.
We could be left in the
dust.
And
so that's how companies, even small companies like ourselves, that's how they're thinking. And so I think
good companies,
the people that get left behind and they're going to be the most impacted are the people that can't take that same mindset and apply it to their own personal lives.
Right.
Because jobs are going to change quickly. They have been, and they're
Right.
going to continue changing and evolving. So just continue to invest in yourself, your personal growth, your professional growth, your education, your skill set.
Right.
And I venture to say, like, if you do that consistently, like, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
You're going to land on your feet. You're
Yeah.
you're going to find opportunities. So anyways, it's a lot going on, a lot of things to be positive about. All of the risks that we were talking about. It's funny how I feel like on a week to week or month to month basis,
Yeah.
you know, the emotional feelings and,
sure.
and it just ebb and flow. But so much to be positive about right now. But all of the same risks and concerns that we were talking about maybe a few weeks ago
Right.
are still staring at us.
Right.
They didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
But the market's proven to be resilient and kind of climbing that wall of worry. And so we'll see how we go into the end of the year. It'll be interesting to see how some of these big tech companies.
I hope I'm wrong, because
announce.
I predicted, Lee had asked a couple of podcasts ago where we thought the market was going to end the year.
Yeah,
And
I think we're already past what mine.
No, mine too. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm dead wrong, right?
Yeah.
I love that we keep climbing the wall of, like you said, the wall of worry. I love it. One thing that shifts me again is that UPS number today, and nobody talks about that because it's tech driven. We're all tech driven. Everything's the news. Everybody's about tech.
Yeah.
But UPS doing what they did to me is like a
Gives you some warm and fuzzies.
Yeah, it gives me warm and fuzzies. Yeah, exactly.
Sure. No, it's
So
good.
I like
It's
that
great
one.
to see. I mean, if the only companies making money and posting beats were, the Mag 7 and everyone else was not, then that's
Not sustainable.
that's not great.
Yeah.
So
It's good to see it in areas that matter to tipping us off where the economy is going. If UPS did not meet and they sorely missed, to me that's a sign of a deteriorating economy, right?
Yeah.
So I like hearing that they beat.
yeah. We're gonna wrap up here because my stomach's growling. I need to go eat something. But good conversation. Think about, talk to your advisor. If you work with an advisor, go talk to him. If you work with us, come talk to us. If you don't work with an advisor, come talk to us about, where should your assets be held? How should you be planning for taking income in retirement, out of what accounts? There's a lot that goes into that. So make sure you have someone you can talk through and start planning as early. The sooner you start planning for that, the easier it is. So great conversation today on that and kind of where the market's at. We appreciate you guys. Thank you for watching, listening. Give us a like, subscribe, give us a comment, shoot us an email, and we'll be sure to be back on here next week, and we'll see you guys then.
The hosts of the Market Moment podcast are employees of Mach 1 Financial Group, LLC. Mach 1 is a registered investment advisor located in Rogers, Arkansas. A copy of Mach 1's current written disclosure brochure is available through the SEC website and available at disclosures.mach1fg.com.